Morning, world. This is Steve Rao, one of the co-hosts of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. And today, I just wanted to open up my monologue on one of the most historic speeches of his political career and in the history of the Democratic Convention in the United States, where the 46th President of the United States, introduced by his daughter Ashley Biden, gave an emotional farewell to the American people and to the Democrats, and anointed his vice president and friend, Kamala Harris, to be the new face of the Democratic Party and the next president of the United States, as we stand 48 hours away from her formally accepting her party's nomination in Chicago. It was a stunning address, bringing tears to my eyes and many to hear from our president on his over half a century of service to our nation as a senator, as the vice president, and as the president of the United States. He talked about unemployment being down. He talked about jobs. He talked about the coalition of European nations and a strong NATO and fighting for democracy and against dictatorship. He talked about doing the right thing, and he felt that Vice President Harris had the integrity and the experience to continue the work that he's done. But at the end of the day, for me, it was kind of personal. Having known the president and some of his family members growing up in Delaware, having seen him as a U.S. Senator when I was a young 18-year-old, and looking at his political journey spanning over half of my life, I began to realize that there's been so much darkness that's shrouded this man's life, from the death of his wife and two children, most recently Beau Biden. But what seems to have guided him out of this darkness is his love of people and his purpose and that light of service, which he admitted he hasn't done everything right. To me, is brings a sense of unity to the Democratic Party. And I really believe that in many ways he will go down as the George Washington of his era, his country's history, because as in the Alexander Hamilton musical, One Last Time, he taught us how to say goodbye, to do it with dignity, to do it with faith in America, and the fact that a young boy with a stutter could grow up from humble beginnings in Delaware to sit behind the resolute desk of the Oval Office. How fitting it is that now his nominee of his own party, which he, by the way, he said he would be a volunteer for the Harris-Walz campaign, finds a compelling American story in Kamala Harris and her rise to the possibly highest office in the land. More on the convention as we begin this show today, as the Obamas are expected to address the nation along with others. But Mr. President, we thank you for your service. We wish the Bidens all the best now as you transition to a more peaceful private life, one which is well deserved. We thank you for your service to our country and the world. With that being said, I want to bring in Mark Lee. I'm here for about 30 minutes today, and kind of a fireside chat. I mean, lots of I'm going on WPTF this afternoon. We're going to be interviewing Congressman Wiley Nickel on WPTF, and also Leo Williams, the mayor of Durham. They are both delegates to the convention. But it was interesting to hear from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. We heard from AOC, many members of the party, Jim Clyburn, and then, of course, Jill Biden, Ashley Biden, and the President of the United States, and a surprise appearance by Vice President. But a lot of energy, a lot of time left, Mark, but it was a good night for the Democrats.
Yeah, lots of good energy. I did hear one of the politicians speak about Project 2025. They brought in the book and talked about what that impact would be. So it sounds like they were trying to use that as a campaign conversation point and everything. I also saw that they had some icons. I believe Jesse Jackson came out and everything, along with Sharpton and some others. I think Jesse might have even come out on a wheelchair. Correct me if I'm wrong about that and everything along those lines. But definitely there were some iconic people that were speaking and mobilizing the forces and all in it that way. So it was quite fascinating, and it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. And in that sense, Rick, you had some thoughts about
so every year or two, they survey presidential historians about who were the best and worst presidents, and Trump has come in last of all presidents. twice. Then in several other surveys, it came in second worst, third worst. Biden's been surveyed twice. The first time he was ranked 19th best. The last time was 14th best. Him, not running, deciding to turn it over to Harris. And if she gets elected, I think that may put him in the top 10 for the next survey of presidents.
Yep. And by the way, there could be some other interesting things because I think that one of the ladies that spoke was actually the lieutenant governor for Waltz. And if Harris should be elected and Waltz be the vice president, then I think she will be the first indigenous American governor. So that is the young lady that is currently serving, I believe, as a lieutenant governor. But that's something people have been talking about, that she would be the first. I know there are a couple of indigenous folks that are in the Senate, but she would be the first one that has got the governorship ranking. And all along those lines.
Yeah, I've heard her speak. She sounds great. And compared to your state where, that Robinson guy is like just a loathsome lunatic. And I wish you guys the best in him not getting elected.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see how that plays out and everything. What is your thoughts about that race and everything? Because I know you are friends with Josh Stein, who was running against Robinson and everything. But what is your take on that lieutenant governor's race that Rick is talking about, Steve?
Well, I think that Stein has taken a significant lead in the polls just over the last 2 weeks because of some of the continued mishaps that Lieutenant Governor has had, particularly with, backing off on his abortion stance. We initially said he wanted women should keep their skirts down, and it's not about protecting life. It's about a woman that cannot keep her skirt down. And then it turns out his wife had an abortion, so he backtracked a little bit on that. But I think Vice President Harris on that ticket clearly helps all the Democrats in North Carolina. But I think most people look at the governorship in North Carolina as the chief executive of the 8th largest state. And I just feel like you need to have a governor that's going to represent all of North Carolina well to all the country and all the world. And I think it's fair to say that Mark Robinson just isn't going to do that. He's just going to be so divisive. And so I believe, Rick, that he'll probably lose. I'm hoping that it'll be the end of his political career. I don't think that, I think he may have delusions of grandeur of coming back and running for the U.S. Senate. But I think if he's defeated in an 8 to 10% spread, I predict this will be like the Josh Shapiro race when Shapiro won by 12, 15 points. I think that's what's going to happen in this race. And I think, but we don't want to take it for granted. So, and I think it's kind of, the final thing I'll say is that I think that many Republicans in North Carolina, I don't think they saw this coming of a different type of presidential race, which I think is really going to affect their elections down ballot. So I think there's probably a lot of Republicans out there really scared that, buyer's remorse on, number one, who they nominated for governor. That's what I'm hearing out there in circles. Also, who they nominated for president. I think there's a little concern now that the Trump coattails may not be as much as everyone thought, because you can feel it. I don't know about you, Rick, but I can feel the energy slipping from him now. I can feel
Trump. Yeah, I mean, the organization feels rickety, but we still have 11 weeks to go, and they call it the October surprise.
One of the issues that came up in the debate, or came up in the first day of conventions, was the handling of the pandemic by the Trump administration. And apparently we are possibly in the midst of something new in that way, because Mpox, the WHO is saying, or WHO officials, is not the new COVID, but there was the first meeting of the International Health Regulations Emergency Committee regarding the upsurge of Mpox 2024. And it is apparently a new virus, and they are saying that it is a global health emergency, even though they are saying some folks are wondering whether it will trigger another pandemic, even though it seems like they are trying to downplay that. But how important do you think issues like this in terms of the health could be and everything? Because
I don't know for sure, but I think monkeypox isn't transmitted through the air, which, it's the worst virus. Things get the worst when they become transmittable through breathing. But I think monkeypox, you need physical contact. We always pray like Ebola never becomes transmitted through breathing, because then you've got like a Walking Dead scenario.
Just really quickly, I see we got Sasha with us as well. And Zelensky is saying the push into Russia is showing the West red lines are naive. And definitely there are some people that saying Ukraine's Russian incursion may be hard to sustain, and Russia is deploying space troops to defend Kursk and everything. So definitely it seems like Russians are baffled after Putin's space troops were deployed as an infantry in Kursk and everything. So what is your take on this incursion? And I know you'll be talking about it later on this evening or later on this morning on Ukraine, Russia, and China. But what is your take on this part of the conflict and how it is playing, maybe even playing in our national politics?
Well, this Ukrainian attack on Russian territory, and very successful so far, I must say, showed that Russia is extremely vulnerable. Their borders are not defended, and its territory is ready to be taken, and people, civilians, and especially what's interesting is that their infantry, they are immediately give up. They are not fighting Ukrainian forces. They immediately give up because they know there are two outcomes. Once they will give up and they will be honorably treated, well fed, and there are numerous confirmations in that, or fighting and being killed. Ukrainians now employing about 200 former inmates who were offering, instead of sitting in their jails, to go on the front lines and fight Russian invaders. And they agreed only on one condition. They don't want to take prisoners. They don't need it. So if they will see Russian forces, they will just kill them. So this is very interesting development. Ukraine is no longer a victim of Russians' attack. It proved that it can counterattack just as well. It can take over Russian territory. And this is, in fact, probably the most important development in this 2.5 years old war.
Yeah.
So
one of the other things,
I've looked at maps that it looks like they still hold about 400 square miles, which is, I mean, it's not a lot, but it's the first invasion of Russia since World War II. It's about the size of, I don't know, the city of LA, the territory they hold.
Right.
Hey, Rick, one of the other things that's going on is the Middle East is still very much in the news. Hezbollah apparently fired 75 rockets at Israel after IDF hit weapons depots in eastern Lebanon. And so definitely look like Israeli strike targeted Hezbollah sites in Lebanon, according to the Israeli military, and the fire erupted after dozens of rockets poured over northern Israel. So I just wanted y'all's take on that part of the world and how that could play a role in the elections of the U.S.
So the Hezbollah and is kind of a proxy for Iran. Iran supplies them with weaponry, and the Gaza thing is in the south of Israel. Hezbollah is in the north of Israel. I don't think it'll get solved, but Sasha knows better than I do, before the election. I don't think people are, I mean, there are a ton of protesters, pro-Palestine, anti-genocide protesters outside of the convention. They've largely been orderly. They've had 2 days of protest so far. It's nothing like 1968, which harmed the Democrats, the disorder, the cops busting heads, the fighting in the streets. It looked chaotic, and it helped Nixon win that election. Nothing like that is happening in the streets of the same city this time around.
Yeah, well, there
The
seems to be
protests of 1968 were justified because it was protests against Vietnam's war, where a lot of Americans were killed and maimed. And so people were very often members of the families and friends. So it was genuine protests, easily understood. Now, this time, Americans are protesting against the war between Israel and Palestine, Gaza. Now, how many Americans were being killed in that war so far?
A couple dozen, maybe.
No, zero. There are a few hostages, probably as many as 8. That's okay. It's tragic, and they have to be all released, not only U.S. Hostages, Israelis as well, and so on, but it's not happening. So the Hamas, who started these atrocities on October 7th last year, it's almost 10 months ago, soon will be a year, they don't surrender, unlike Germany did, Japan did, Hamas doesn't. And these paid idiots are demonstrating, supporting this. I wouldn't even call them terrorists. They're much worse than that. And they are supporting that. This is horrible. It should not happen in America. They all have to be arrested, interrogated, thrown in jail.
Sasha, there seems to be some mixed news. I did see your hand, Jacoby, and everything, but apparently 2 hours ago, Blinken was saying that Israel has accepted a ceasefire deal, and then as recently as an hour ago, there were Israeli and Hamas officials saying that there is little chance for a ceasefire breakthrough. So there is some mixed signals out there as to whether a ceasefire is on its way and everything. And I did see what Kim had asked, which is how small is will, and do you think there will be a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas soon? So if you've got any thoughts about that, Sasha, and then Jacoby, you had a question.
They have to be unconditional surrender, not any peace negotiations. There has to be unconditional surrender, period. And I don't understand U.S. administration who are on the way to end this war several months ago by exterminating Hamas. Instead, they are prolonging that war. So more people are being killed. This is not the way to end this war.
Jacoby?
To start, the protests are just as justified as they were prior. The reason they are justified is because people have something that they are protesting for that we need to listen to. The reason that they aren't out of control as they were in years prior is the fact that they are being listened to by the Democratic Party. They are actually being acknowledged. During the speech last night, even Joe Biden in his speech acknowledged the protests, which helped out the situation because, again, the protests, when they get out of control, is when they do not think they're being heard. So they get worse and worse. They are justified in the sense that there is a problem going on in Gaza, and there are a lot of people dying, and people seem to want to ignore the fact that 40,000 people or 40,000 Palestinian people have died. Hamas and the Palestinian people are not the same group. And the more we keep trying to say they are, creates a large problem for a lot of people. Again, I pointed this out yesterday, and I'll point it out again today, is that, you're not going to sit here and ask for somebody's papers. Are you in Hamas? Show me your papers. No. Are you Palestinian? Show me your paper. No, it gets to be a situation when you denigrate one group, conflate them, or say that they are the same. Just because they are brown, it creates a problem for all people of color, because people begin, especially in this difficult time that we're in, where we are at each other's throats, literally, it causes a problem for a lot of people who do not have the safe haven of the color of their skin, which, again, that is a problem. So getting back to Mark, if I heard you correctly, they are at a ceasefire deal, or they are almost at a ceasefire deal.
Sounds like they're almost at it. There's some conflicting reports.
And that is something that needs to happen. That does not prolong the war. The problem that we are at also, because we haven't even acknowledged that there was reports of Israelis attacking Palestinian settlements, which has been going on for a while. But there was just recently an Israeli group that went after this Palestinian settlement. It is unfair to, in a way, say it is a settlement for the Palestinian people when it was their land that they were on, and this Israeli settlement or people of that Israeli settlement were attacking those individuals that were there. So we're just creating more problems. The longer this goes on, the ceasefire could help and bring peace to both the Palestinian people and the Israeli people, the Israeli people, so they can live in peace, work in peace, because neither group wants to be attacked.
Yeah.
Everything Hamas did was atrocious, and nobody is condoning that. The issue is we've got to figure out a way not only to get the hostages back, the ones that are still living, and even the bodies of those that have passed on. We have to get those individuals back. But we also have to figure out a way for this area to live in peace.
Just really quickly and switching the topic just slightly and everything. There is, because we were talking about media yesterday about the way AI can do things and even how people can be portrayed and all along those lines. So apparently there's some people, because I did see it online, that were very inspired by AOC and her DNC speech where she said that Donald Trump would sell this country for $1, but there were also folks that were saying that she had a fake accent, and I guess that was a fake Spanish accent or maybe a fake New York accent. I'm not sure what was fake about the accent, but Rick, did you hear anything about this? And what is
No, but when you have nothing, you just throw out bullshit. And then lately, the Republicans have been throwing out a lot of ridiculous bullshit because they don't have good arguments.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The last thing I heard was that Kamala's drunk, that when she's so happy in public appearances, it must mean that she's drinking. It's like, that's just, try anything.
Well, I've got a question because I wish Nick was here because he's our lawyer and everything. There might be others that have a legal background, but apparently the jury had found the parents of a gunman in Texas not liable in that 2018 Texas school shooting. So we do know that in a number of cases, the parents are the ones that provided the gun, or the kids would get the gun from the parents. But the jury found the parents of the accused Santa Fe High School shooter not liable in that civil trial. So is that a good thing or a bad thing, or should we be holding parents liable if folks are
you should put them on. You should investigate every incident like that and see if the parents are liable, like the one where the kid shot up 4 people and the parents were found guilty. There was a ton of evidence that the parents were super negligent, and in this case they looked at the evidence and decided it can go either way. You can have parents who are a-holes who buy insane kids guns that they aren't even legally entitled to have. And on the other hand, you can be perfectly decent parents or mediocre parents who are shocked to find out that your kid's been stockpiling ammo and guns and has shot up a place.
Yeah, but I know Kim's in the background, and I know she's very big on issues that have to do with domestic violence and things along those lines. And apparently in Milwaukee, which is where the Republican convention was held, there was an 11-year sentence for a Milwaukee woman who killed her sex trafficker. So it was known that this person trafficked this lady and everything. And apparently she's got 11 years for killing her abuser and everything. So is there a time that it is maybe a little bit too stern of a punishment and everything? Because if she's been
cases like that, nobody's ever satisfied. I mean, you've got a person who suffered as being trafficked. You've got a dead person, and given the nature of the relationship, the odds that the jury gets it exactly right or not super high. You never want to go to court, even for, because like throwing stuff to a judge and jury, they maybe get it right 2/3 of the time because people have better lawyers. The law, I think, and I'm not a lawyer, Nick, is designed to minimize the number of cases that go to a judge and jury because that's it's time consuming, it's expensive, and you get a lot of less than perfect outcomes. If you've got enough law that the lawyers on each side are afraid of going to a jury, then they can reach a settlement or a plea bargain, and that often provides the most reasonable justice.
Yeah, guys, I'm just gonna close out before I got an 11 o'clock show, and I'm gonna get some stuff done before then. But anyway, tonight, as I close out with a very exciting first night, we're gonna be talking about a little bit more tomorrow about Ukraine, and President Biden did mention that Ukraine is still standing strong after 3 years. Putin said he was going to take Kyiv in 3 days, so he did mention that. Not much talk about Israel, so we'll see what Obama say tonight. Both Michelle Obama and President Obama will be speaking. That should be very interesting, and all building up to Thursday evening when Vice President Harris accepts the nomination. A lot of energy here in America, a lot of eyes on this election. I think a lot of us are going to be having a lot of talk about a few months.
Steve, before you leave, and I know you got to leave and everything, but one of the things that I did see on the convention, and it seems to be a big talking point, we've talked about it here on this show as well, is that the abortion issue, even Sasha has brought it up, it seems like it's a pivotal issue and one that could be a swing issue and everything. So I was wondering your take on that, because apparently there were several women that told their stories of how they had to go through either abortion, pregnancy, or miscarriages, and they were some very
I think that's a great question.
That was Amanda Zarawoski or Caitlin Joshua or Hadley Duvall that talked about their consequences due to their various states' abortion bans.
Mark, I think that's a great question, and I think that these are two significantly important issues. I think the abortion issue could turn out a lot of women in this election. They're very motivated. The vice president's been very strong on this issue, and I think that she will continue to do so. So I think it's a great opportunity for the Democrats to reach out to independents, and even in these swing states. If you noticed last night, if you were watching it in the U.S., about every 20 minutes, there was a negative ad on the border issue. Longest negative ad I've seen went for about 4.5 minutes. And I think that that's going to be a weak issue for the vice president. So I think, they're obviously pulling that issue and going to use that as much as they can, kind of saying that open borders while she was the border czar, it didn't work. People are coming in. Biden, the president, defended. They're both saying that Trump had the opportunity to sign off on bipartisan legislation. He didn't because it wasn't politically expedient for him, and it would have benefited the president. So we'll wait and see, Mark. But I think these are two really, really important issues that will determine the result of this election. And of course, we just don't know, how big of an issue is it in, Wisconsin and Michigan and Arizona. Will immigration be more of an issue to get the Republicans? Georgia is at play. I missed Senator Warnock.
Steve, along those same lines and everything, apparently there is a Biden program that undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens can apply for and everything. So it's a citizenship program for immigrant spouses of U.S. citizens. So it's something that DHC has launched called Keeping Families Together initiatives to support these non-citizen spouses and the stepchildren of the U.S. citizens. So it's just something that will be good, maybe like the Dreamers initiative and everything in terms of playing toward that Latin vote.
Yeah, I think that it's just, it's an issue that we're going to continue to look at, and I don't know what the solution is to the immigration problem, but I do think they need to address it. So, illegal immigrants aren't just coming here in droves, and with the situation in Venezuela, it's only going to make it worse. I think it's only a matter of weeks before thousands of Venezuelans try to make it to Central America on the border. I'm going to come back at 11. I just want to close out my end. Sasha Starr's coming on, and I will be on the Ukrainian show at 11.
Yep, sounds good.
See you tomorrow to wrap up, and should be a good show tomorrow.
Yeah. Rick, what was your take on that and everything?
So, I mean, one thing that Steve mentioned that they had the three women who suffered horrible, either like the one woman had been raped by her stepdad and impregnated at age 12. Another woman almost died because of Texas's abortion laws. One way to see if these messages are getting through is to look at the ratings. So the RNC, the last night of the RNC, 25 million people tuned in. And I expect, and some people are predicting, that the DNC is much less of a bummer of a time. There's a lot more excitement. And so we'll see. I'm guessing that over 30 million people, maybe even as many as 35 million, will tune in to the last night of the DNC.
Yeah. Jacoby, you had something you want to say?
I think this kind of ties into, actually, I'm going to try and tie it back into one thing that I think we glossed over a little bit, which was the case that you were brought up about the young lady who ended up shooting her domestic abuser.
Yes.
I think that this, and I consistently say it, is that women are going to carry this vote. And the reason the abortion issue is huge is because women are going to carry this vote. It is a huge issue. It's carried that vote in the past elections ever since Roe v. Wade was overturned. Even before then, it was mainly Black women, but that was what saved democracy during in 2020 because it was more Black women voted for Joe Biden, and that was a huge thing. But I think because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, that is symbolic in a sense of what women go through of being overlooked in the country and unlistened to. Because if you think about all the failures that had to happen for that woman to get so frustrated and put herself and feel her life was in danger that she had to legitimately kill somebody to protect her life, because restraining orders don't really work. And women have to deal with that. And they've gone, and if you look at Donald Trump and how people have defended him, because people defend powerful men, especially when they are up against a woman in that situation where, hey, no, that woman is just lying. She's a gold digger. She whatever. No. And the excuses that we give, she wanted it, she wore this. So women deal with so many things that we as men can barely understand or fathom. And so I think this powerful moment, I don't think that we understand the moment that we're in. I get that with Hillary Clinton, there were because she had been denigrated for so many years and she had been attacked for so many years. There were some women that were on the fence, but Kamala Harris doesn't have that issue. So I think that there are going to be a lot of women that didn't vote for Hillary that are going to be okay voting for Kamala. The tough part is going to be Black men. That's going to be an issue there, and men itself in general. But I do think a lot of women, because Kamala Harris doesn't have the baggage that was perceived with Hillary Clinton, so there are going to be a lot of women that are going to carry this vote. And it's just symbolic, just to see all the pieces falling together, and it's cool to see. So yeah.
Hey, Jacoby, along those same lines and everything, I don't know if you saw Kimberly's quote, but she said, you know how Trump calls Democrats communists. Well, communists have banned books and banned women from making choices for themselves, and they spread fear and point blame. And I actually saw this great T-shirt at an event that I was at over the weekend, and everything. I'm trying to remember where the event was at, but it was actually here. It was actually a couple of book authors that were speaking, and the young lady had on the shirt, ban bigots, not ban books and everything. So she was actually saying that maybe that's what we need to ban. Instead of banning books, is ban those bigots that want to ban the books. And all along those lines is kind of what the shirt implied. I did have a question for both you and Rick. There seems to be some serious attack ads that are going on. I know that Trump is saying that he's better looking than Kamala Harris. And of course, there was that moment in the Hillary Clinton speech where the lock him up speech came out and everything. So will these attack ads work in you two gentlemen's opinion? Because both sides are doing some serious attack ads. Like I said, Trump is warning that if Kamala Harris wins, everybody gets health care. That could be actually a good thing.
Depends on like how many you always, with everything that happens, you always have to ask, will this change anybody's minds? And more than 90% of voters have already decided who they're voting for. Can you flip any of them? Ads, I mean, they're going to spend what, $1 billion or more on all this stuff in the next 2.5 months. And the money spent versus the minds changed. They're spending, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to change somebody's mind on average. They're not very effective. The last there was the Willie Horton ad when Dukakis was running. That was an effective ad. And then you got to go back to like 1964, where LBJ running against Barry Goldwater ran an ad showing a little girl in a field of daisies that was obliterated by a nuclear mushroom cloud. that helped win the election for LBJ, but it's a rare ad that changes minds like that.
That makes sense and everything. I know one of our other shows, just pivoting the conversation just briefly, is the Timeshare Show. And I did see that a beachfront house in Outer Banks owned by Pennsylvania residents washed away. And apparently the homeowners of the Rodanthe home that collapsed into the ocean had already sent an imminent letter of concern one day earlier. So I was just wondering whether it's a timeshare or whether it's some of these other houses, because it does seem, even where you at, Rick, that some of the homes are built on precarious locations.
So in Florida, it now costs $11,000 a year on average to get homeowners insurance. In California, my wife's been going crazy for the last month because our home insurance company went out of business. They quit covering in California, and she's talked to more than a dozen insurers trying to get insurance for our house, which is in a perfectly safe place. And it's what we're having to do is all our walls, there's holes in all our walls now because we have to replace all our plumbing we had galvanized, which is a really stupid way to make pipes out of steel because steel rusts. Anyway, we've had to replace it all with copper. Our house is torn up. And it's because like a lot of it's climate change. California has, all these fires, and it freaks out insurers. Insurers don't want to go bankrupt because states are burning down.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Or being washed away.
Florida's
freaking ridiculous. That's almost $1,000 a month to protect your house. A house that might be worth $400,000, and you're spending 3% of that money a year to insure it.
Yeah, well, speaking of insurance, I see an industry is kind of pushing back on Kamala Harris's economic plans, because apparently the food industry is saying that they are not doing the price gouging and everything along those lines. So I'm not surprised by that. Of course, they're going to be countering her argument and everything. And
so the average profit margin, I think, for supermarkets is like 2%. And then they took advantage and they did some price gouging to raise their profit margins to 3% and 4%. And yeah, they're screwing people. At the same time, that's like, if I can understand if you're in, a business that has such tight margins, you're going to want to get in there and take advantage while you can. Versus the oil companies, I have less of a gripe with grocery stores than I do with oil companies who have been price gouging and having record-setting profits, and who get hundreds of millions of dollars in federal subsidies every year on top of that.
Well,
It's
I've been,
hard to say that inflation is bad when companies have record profits. So it's just, I think everything Rick said is spot on. Everything Rick said is,
But they've done studies, and that according to one study, 52% of the inflation that we've been dealing with has been price gouging versus other stuff that companies hid behind. It's inflation because Biden was spending and he passed infrastructure and da da da. They hide behind that to sneak in their added prices.
yep. How much, Jacoby, because I know you follow mass media and everything along those lines, how much are you going to pay attention to what Kevin O'Leary says? Because apparently Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary was ripping into Kamala Harris's economic agenda. And I do know that he is seen as a business tycoon and all of those lines, just like the former president was. But how much leeway are you giving this gentleman that apparently is not happy with the economic plan?
Yeah,
it's
he
just politics.
shows up on Fox News talking.
Yep, it's just politics. That's all it's going to be now, because the trajectory that Kamala Harris is on is, she is skyrocketing. She's going to get a bump from this convention. If it's a 1 or 2 point bump, that puts her outside of the margin of error. Right now, she's sitting on the border she's sitting 3.5 points, 4 points ahead, which is, right there on the border of that margin of error. And she's going to get a bump from this convention. Yeah. That's going to put her outside of the margin of error. You're going to have more people. You're going to have Donald Trump steadily melting down, saying more and more rapid, crazy stuff. And you've got to find ways. On the Republican Party, they're trying to find ways to tear them down rather than talk about the policies.
No, that makes sense. Everything.
So if you look at Comey, you saw that James Comey's trying to open a impeachment hearing or something crazy.
Comer, yeah, that guy, the guy who looks like a thumb.
Yeah,
he and Jim Jordan are just a couple of jagoffs who
Jim Jordan should be in jail. Jim Jordan was a part of that rape case in Ohio State. He should be in jail.
I think the statute of limitations is over. Yeah, he's a jerk.
Question for both of you. How much of a defector list has there been? Because I've already heard, I think there was 1, maybe 2 Republicans or former members of the Trump administration that spoke at the DNC yesterday. I think there's 1 or 2 that are supposed to be speaking today and everything. I don't remember that from the Republican convention, but I could be wrong.
One of the points that Raskin made is this is the first time in U.S. history, or at least the first time in 200 years, that a president's VP has refused to endorse him, because Mike Pence is given what happened. But part of Kamala Harris's plan is to see if she can get first-time home buyers $25,000 to help get them into houses. And I've been saying stuff on Twitter, and conservatives say, oh, well, that means that the price of all houses will immediately jump up $25,000, which seems like BS to me, nonsense. But I say my own nonsense. But we have Economics Monday with David M. Walker. We didn't have it this Monday, I think, because he's helping set up the debate among third-party candidates. Yes. But the next time we have David M. Walker on, we can ask him all these questions about Harris's plan to see. I trust his opinions more than I trust my own, and maybe he can say what part of the plan makes sense, what the effects might be. Like price controls, they tried that in the 70s under President Ford, and it didn't work. They were having inflation in the 70s. I don't know. Are there ways to? I would think they had price controls in World War II that probably did work, because the whole country had, was pulled together, to make sacrifices for the common good and beat the Nazis. But short of fighting Nazis, can you make price controls work? I don't know, but David M. Walker probably does.
But is she talking about price controls, though? Because I think...
I guess that's the Republican label they put on it. Is exactly. She wants to stop price gouging, But is that even the same thing? I don't know. It sounds
don't
like the
think
same
so.
thing to me, but I don't know anything.
So I don't think price gouging and or stopping price gouging and stopping and putting in price controls or telling businesses how high they can go and how low they can go and stuff like that. I think those are two totally different things. But I think because it's easy to understand or it's easy for people to fear, hey, we're going to put price controls and do this whole. But I don't think that's what she's talking about, because again, price controls themselves. Technically, we already do that in a sense.
Well, there are laws that if a hurricane's coming,
Yeah.
that you can't. Convenience stores can't charge $12 for a bottle of water.
And so that is what I think that the battle is going to be, because, for example, when the airports were shut down just recently, price gouging was happening. There were hotels that were charging exorbitant amounts of money just for a hotel. There were restaurants that were charging exorbitant amount of money. That's price gouging. When we were going through, when gas prices were skyrocketing in particular places a few years back. I mean, this was actually before Trump. I think it was during Obama when there was a spike in gas prices. There were some places that were doing price gouging. So I think I think this is where the Republican Party, again, they're still trying to throw everything against the wall to see what sticks. They're going to stick with the price. She's coming in like, Stalin and trying to do price controls because people understand.
Yeah,
exactly. Because she's not even talking about controlling prices. She's talking about stopping price gouging. And that's two separate issues. The one thing that I want to say, that I would love to ask David, because I do know David leans left or leans right a little bit, and he has his conservative issue, is conservative. And again, this is nothing against it, because nobody has all the answers, and it's good to have a logical, legitimate discussion between two individuals or a couple of individuals, all from different sides, because nobody has every answer. And David is brilliant, and he's a smart man. I love listening to him. But what I would love to hear from David is, because this is another Republican talking point that's starting to pop in due to the $25,000 for housing. They're talking about, that's communism doing that. But what's the difference between giving $25,000 for first-time homeowners to assist people to get into homes or incentivize people to buy homes? What's the difference in that compared to giving $8,000 to people to buy electric cars? That's not considered communism. And that's to buy a Tesla, and people are, we're going to buy that. That's not communism, but giving $25,000 for a home is. So I think it gets back to the whole wording. People don't like this wording, and they're easy to jump on that wording. But we're okay with understanding price gouging, and we're cool with that. So I think that's the same. So I would love to ask David that situation.
That'd be a good question with David. Kimberly was just saying, like I said, you can't teach ethics, but you can teach how to do economics and other things. I am entertained by idiots who say they know Trump has no morals, but they are voting for him for economics. So that's something that she was adding.
Yeah. So so you can make the same argument. How is it not some kind of weird communism, socialism to throw tariffs on stuff? Because when you put a $10,000 tariff on Japanese cars, for instance, that means they still sell Japanese cars in the U.S., but the price goes up by $10,000. So I buy the argument. Again, I don't know beans about anything, but it makes sense that a tariff on a Japanese car bounces directly back to the consumer who might want a Japanese car.
Mm-hmm.
It does. And the crazy part, though, again, it gets back to that messaging. I think it was Trump yesterday. Was he at a speech yesterday or this week or sometime? Or no, last week or something, trying to explain that and trying to say, well, no, tariffs don't affect, and people coming out saying that it affects the people in the U.S. No, it's a tariff goes after. People can hear tariff and hear foreign country. They don't understand the connection of how it comes back through. So the low information voter is not listening for, or is not understanding how it wraps back around and it affects them. But they're hearing that, okay, well, we're taking away taxes, but we're putting on tariffs, and tariffs are for the other countries, but they don't realize that it's, worse in what they're doing. So yeah.
So one thing I've learned from Trump is that it's very helpful to be able to tell when a politician is joking or not. Like when Biden says, I've been a senator for 270 years. He's joking. You can tell he's joking. With Trump, you can't ever friggin' tell. Like he says, he's more beautiful than Kamala Harris. Now that has no political implications, but you have no way of telling whether he actually believes that. When he says, I'm going to be a dictator on day one, is he joking? Does he know what he's saying? It's like there's no clarity with Trump. Trump can say anything, and we don't know whether he means it or not. And that it makes it hard to judge his policies because you don't know whether they're actually his policies.
But Rick,
I mean,
isn't that part of the problem is that nobody knows how much he actually believes what he's saying, because some of it
right. I mean, there's no clarity. He says whatever. I mean, imagine having him for a boyfriend. Like you wouldn't know whether he was banging people or whether he loves you or anything.
And I think a lot of the stuff that he says, he believes. I mean, because he is that egomaniac, he has to be the best at everything. So he believed that his crowd was bigger than Martin Luther King Jr.'s crowd, even though it's factually wrong. But and I think he also says a lot of this stuff because if he could say it, I hate to reference I won't even reference it. But if you say the lie loud enough and multiple times, people will start to believe it, and that's what Trump goes on. He's a showman. If he feels he can sell it to you, he's going to sell it to you loudly. Even though it's a lie, he's going to sell it to you over and over. And I guess in a similar vein with this whole thing, and this is what gets me about how things have changed in our society. Morals used to be our big thing. That used to be one of the biggest things that a president should show. It should be, one of the biggest qualifications for some individuals was, he had to be, Christian. He had to have these moral views. He had to be on this moral high ground in every situation. But now we're at a point because of Trump. So what? He hurt your feelings. Look at this. Why are we there now? And I think thinking about that is where our problem is that we've forgotten that if we're supposed to be this this shiny house on the hill, or this beacon of hope, but we're saying, well, that beacon of hope doesn't really have to shine really bright, so what? It hurts you. So what? It calls you this.
Trump met an unmet market niche. It turns out that a large segment of the population really want to be assholes. And he's like, we haven't had a president before who's like, come on, assholes, get behind me, and we'll all be a-holes together. I think maybe we're seeing the opposite happen with Harris. Like the most Americans like a national cheerleader, an FDR, a Reagan, a JFK that we can like unite behind and feel good about ourselves. Maybe our George H.W. Bush with 1,000 points of light, Reagan, shining city on a hill. And now we're supposed to embrace the joy behind Harris, and people like that. But there is a significant minority of Americans who I call it the sportification of politics, that when you root for your team, Celtics versus Lakers, you can be an a-hole. You can say terrible things about the other team.
That's very true and everything. But like you said, it's several weeks to go. We still got the rest of the convention. And like you said, the Obamas will be there. I did get some good news. I think that Rick might be joining in because I think Kim had asked us where, not Rick, but Steve was going. I think he's going to be joining Sasha at the 11 o'clock Ukraine show and all along those lines. But I did get some good news, even though it was sad because it was a place that one of our other founders, Nick Palveda, is going to. But apparently the world's oldest living person has passed away at 117. Could we all
They're always doing that. Somebody is killing all the world's oldest people one by one.
Yeah, because Maria Branas Moreray apparently passed away at 117. So maybe this means that Nick, when he goes over there along with his wife, will be making it to 117 and everything. So I don't know how y'all would feel about it. It seems like it might be interesting to live that long, but then again, you would probably lose a lot of your faculties and everything like that. So I don't know what y'all want to be living to 117.
There's a thing in longevity called falling off the table, where you don't want to decline. You want to go healthy, 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 dead. You want to. So, yeah, part of longevity is trying to live healthily for as long as you can. And there's a saying among longevity lunatics. They say that the first person to live to 200 years old is already alive, and I believe that. I don't think it's going to be me, and I'm annoyed by that because I want to get to 200. But medical science, with aided by AI, is going to solve a lot of the problems of aging. And you're going to 80 years from now, you're going to walk into a bar and get hit on by a guy who's 130 years old who looks like a weird 58 years old.
Hey, Jacoby, does this mean that I get to listen to you call the baseball on the game antics of the year 2100 and everything? Because I was looking for.
When I'm gone, I'm gone. When I'm gone, I'm gone. I already had a discussion because we were talking about donor lists and stuff like that. And my father was talking to my daughter about being a donor, and you could do this, and I don't want to do that. And then she asked me, "Are you going to do it?" I say, "Hey, when I'm gone, my stuff can go to somebody else and be used. I'm not even worried about it anymore. So when I'm gone, I'm gone."
Right now, if you had to decide how you were going to be taken care of when you're dead, the only way that offers you a chance of coming back is getting cryonically preserved. They drop you into like liquid nitrogen, and it's a terrible solution because you're really hoping the future gets amazing at doing stuff.
With my luck, if I did that, I'd wake up and we got idiocracy happening.
Yeah, but then you do in idiocracy, a guy comes back and he's just he's half an idiot, but he turns out to be the smartest person in America because the rest of America has gotten so dumb.
Not sure.
I'm going to give away a plot point. All the crops in America are dying 200 years from now. They can't figure it out. And the guy from the past says, maybe try putting water on the crops instead of Gatorade. Gatorade, they call it Brondo.
Yeah, Rick, like
before you carrying the game in 20 and everything. So I'm looking forward to you being at a Drum Bowl game at 21-20. You tell me it's not going to happen.
I can hope, but a lot of stuff has to happen in the next. I'm hoping I have 20 more years.
Cool. We're going to wrap up. We'll be back tomorrow. I might be here at the same location, but it's been a fun conversation. We'll see y'all on tomorrow. You ready to start the Russia-Ukraine show right now?
All right, bye.